I don't wanna lose none of them. Am I confused cause I don't wanna choose one of them?
Oh man.
My first lesson was Freaky Tah. Because I was from 134 and God Brewer. So when we were selling drugs, me, 50, everybody on the block, I seen Freaky Tah do everything for the hood.
Right.
Buy sneakers, get on the dollar van,
Right.
come back to the Ave, chill on the block all day, play.
Imagine leaving such a mark on hip-hop that your name still gets spoken with pride decades later. This is the story of Raymond Freaky Tah Rogers, a legend whose spirit still echoes through the streets of Queens, New York.
Right, and so one thing we got to do is keep this going, and how do we now continue to pass down history and the positivity of what, not just what the Lost Boys stood for, but what Freaky Tah.
More than 25 years after his heartbreaking loss, Freaky Tah's impact on both hip-hop and his neighborhood hasn't faded one bit. It's still alive, celebrated, and filled with love every single year. Back in 1999, tragedy struck when Freaky Tah's life was suddenly taken after leaving a neighborhood party. As a member of the Lost Boys, one of the hottest rap groups of their time, he was already making serious waves in the music world. But what really locked his name into history was his deep love for his community. He was known for looking out for people, giving back, and spreading good energy everywhere he went. To this day, Queens keeps his memory shining bright through Freaky Tah Day, an annual event where fans, family, and friends gather to honor his legacy. The love runs so deep that even big names like Tony Yayo and 50 Cent have shown up to pay tribute, sharing stories of how Freaky Tah inspired them while growing up in the same area.
First lesson was Freaky Tah. Because I was from 134 and God Brewer. So when we were selling drugs, me, 50, everybody on the block, I seen Freaky Tah do everything for the hood.
Right.
Buy sneakers, get on the dollar van,
Right.
come back to the Ave, chill on the block all day.
But here's the real question. How does someone stay this influential even after all these years? Let's take a closer look at what made Freaky Tah such a powerful figure who continues to be celebrated. He wasn't just part of a hip-hop crew, he was a larger-than-life presence in Queens. Through his words, music, and genuine kindness, he promoted peace, hard work, and unity, becoming a symbol of hope for the next generation. Freaky Tah wasn't just talking the talk, he lived it every single day. When word of his passing hit the streets, Queens felt it like a wave crashing over the whole borough. Crowds gathered at his family's apartment on 134th Street, filling the place with love, tears, and stories of how much he had done to lift up the people around him. Everyone spoke about his giving heart, how he'd always push the kids in the neighborhood to stay focused, make good choices, and chase something bigger for themselves. Freaky Tah's father said it best. He called his son a local hero, sharing how Tah would walk the block, checking on the neighborhood kids, asking about their grades, and even rewarding them with sneakers or jackets when they worked hard. His motto was simple but powerful. You do the right thing, and I'll do the right thing. Even though his life ended far too soon, his legacy refuses to fade. Every year, Freaky Tah Day grows stronger, drawing bigger crowds and even more love. The community comes together not just to celebrate his music, but to honor the incredible man behind it all.
Only if you still here, real that's amongst us. Keep my safe and tight circle friends. I don't.
Freaky Tah's journey to becoming an icon started with his brothers in music, Mr. Cheeks, DJ Spiggy Nice, and Pretty Lou. Together, they formed the Lost Boys, a crew that exploded onto the hip-hop scene in 1995 with their debut single, Lifestyles of the Rich and Shameless. The track made waves, hitting the Billboard Hot 100 and landing them a deal with Uptown Records. Their rise didn't stop there. When they dropped the hit Renee for the Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood soundtrack, it blew up nationwide, climbing into the top 40 and earning gold status in 1996. But what made the Lost Boys stand out wasn't just their hits, it was their heart. They used their growing fame to make a difference, joining forces with the Red Hot organization for the America is Dying Slowly compilation, alongside legends like Wu-Tang Clan and Fat Joe, to raise awareness about the AIDS crisis affecting the black community. That move showed everyone that the Lost Boys weren't just chasing fame, they were using their voices for something real, something that mattered. The Lost Boys were always about more than just music. They wanted to make a real difference. But as their fame skyrocketed, life started throwing serious curveballs, setting off events that would change everything. What followed was a heartbreaking turn of fate that reshaped their story forever, leaving behind a bittersweet legacy that still echoes through Queens today. Freaky Tah's passing became a major turning point, not only for the Lost Boys, but for the entire community he represented with pride and love. Even though his time in the spotlight was cut short, his influence never stopped shining. His story stands as a reminder of what it means to lift others up and leave behind a legacy that time simply can't erase. Now rewind back to Queens in the 1990s, a time when tensions were rising between people linked to the Lost Boys and another local crew known as the Hellraisers. Rumors started swirling about robberies and confrontations in Southeast Ozone Park, creating serious tension in the neighborhood. Still, don't get it twisted. The Lost Boys weren't the kind to just stand by quietly. They had strong ties, respect, and deep roots in their city.
By late 1998, those growing conflicts reportedly led to a tragic series of events that would soon draw national attention. Kelvin Jones entered the picture after his half-brother, Michael, lost his life in the midst of that chaos. The two were said to be connected to the Hellraisers, a crew with strong links to the Liberty Avenue area in Jamaica, Queens. At one point, both groups had been cool with each other. They even performed at some of the same shows back in the early 90s. But somewhere along the line, that unity broke down. Some say it was over a personal disagreement, while others believe it had more to do with the changing landscape of neighborhood alliances. Whatever really went down, Michael's death was believed to be connected to a robbery that reportedly involved someone tied to the Lost Boys, a moment that would set off a chain of reactions no one could have predicted. This wasn't just some clash of egos or a small misunderstanding. It was a chain of events that showed just how fragile the balance of power really was in those neighborhoods. The streets had their own code, their own form of justice, and once certain lines were crossed, things could spiral fast. The aftermath left behind pain, rumors, and unanswered questions that would forever hang over the Lost Boys' story. People said Michael had nothing to do with the robbery that supposedly sparked everything, but regardless of what was true, his passing lit a fire in Kelvin Jones. That moment seemed to flip a switch in him, pushing him to make a name for himself in New York City's underground scene. What followed would make him infamous, carving his name into one of Queens' darkest moments. By March 1999, Kelvin's name had become known throughout Queens, not for a hustle or minor street trouble, but for being tied to one of the most shocking moments in the borough's history, the shooting of Freaky Tah, a proud member of the legendary Lost Boys, right outside a local hotel. Now here's the thing about Freaky Tah. A lot of rappers claim to live the life they rapped about, but Tah was that life. Even without social media amplifying every move back then, his story lived on through the memories, photos, and the voices of the people who truly knew him. What no one could deny was his presence. His energy was raw and magnetic. His voice stood out. His confidence commanded attention, and his name carried real weight far beyond the music scene. Tah wasn't just a rapper, he was a figure deeply rooted in his community. Many still say he was one of the top 5 to ever come out of the Guy R. Brewer Boulevard area in Queens, long before he rose to fame with the Lost Boys. In his early days, he was known for his ambition, his drive, and the way he made moves that kept his name alive and respected in the neighborhood. Then came the night of March 28, 1999. The Horny Boys, a local party crew, were throwing one of their signature events. The Lost Boys, along with their circle, had just come from a wedding and decided to pull up to the party to celebrate. It was also Mr. Cheeks' birthday, so the vibe was high and the energy was pure celebration.
Night of his wedding.
Well, this another person you're talking about?
My brother, Wild Wall got married that night before that same night, you know what I'm saying? So it was crazy.
Wow.
And my birthday that same.
But fate had other plans that night. What started as a fun evening took a tragic turn. Mr. Cheeks and a few others had stepped out for a bit to drop off some friends, but when they returned to the Sheraton Hotel, they were met with flashing lights and chaos, a shocking scene that no one expected. Someone had been hurt, and that moment would change Queens hip-hop forever.
Next to him or around him when it happened? Or?
Nah, we left a little, I think we left like about half an hour before he left. So that could have been anything. Could have been anybody. Boom. We left the club, we was going to drop all, some few cats off. So by the time we get over to where we stay at Rockaway Boulevard, we see the ambulance and all of that rushing.
So how did everything spiral to this point? Word started spreading that Kelvin Jones had heard the Lost Boys and some of their crew were planning to be at that party that night. Still carrying the pain of losing his brother Michael, Kelvin's anger reportedly hadn't cooled off. A few months earlier, he had allegedly pulled together two guys, Rasheem and Ryan, to ride with him and keep watch at the event. According to reports, the three parked their van outside the hotel, waiting and watching, trying to spot someone they believed was connected to their ongoing conflict. But as the night dragged on, tensions rose, patience ran out, and frustration started to take over. From there, things took a tragic turn that no one could take back. Some say they never even found the person they were looking for and just reacted out of impulse, firing towards whoever stepped out first. Others think it was a mix-up, a terrible case of mistaken identity. Whatever really happened, it all went down fast. As the early morning hours rolled in and the crowd started to thin, Kelvin, wearing a mask, stepped out of the van towards a group of people outside the hotel. Moments later, Freaky Tah was struck during the chaos.
Panic erupted immediately. The shooter took off in the getaway van, with Rasheem allegedly behind the wheel and Ryan helping as they sped away. Freaky Tah, only 27 years old, was rushed to Jamaica Hospital, where his passing sent shockwaves through Queens and the entire hip-hop community. But the violence didn't stop there. Just 3 days later, on March 31st, 1999, another tragedy hit the streets. A man named Page A was reportedly attacked late at night near 111th Avenue and 128th Street. As the story goes, he tried to run and climb a fence to get away, but his clothes got caught, leaving him exposed. That's when shots were fired, and he was fatally hit before help could reach him. Not long after, police arrested a man named Corey, said to be loosely connected with the Lost Boys. His exact reasons for getting involved were never fully clear. Some people claimed he acted on his own, possibly trying to make a name for himself or earn respect in the streets. What's certain is that this stretch of days marked one of the darkest chapters in Queens hip-hop history. What had started as a community filled with music, energy, and unity had now been scarred by pain, loss, and unanswered questions. The fallout from those moments would take years to heal, but the love for Freaky Tah and what he stood for never faded. Some people believed Corey might have actually been trying to do the honorable thing, retaliating for what happened to Freaky Tah. But the truth, like much of this whole story, was lost in the fog of street rumors and speculation. Corey's arrest was a big deal at the time, but it didn't exactly bring the story to a clean close. If anything, it just created even more questions than answers. Yeah, he faced consequences, but people couldn't help noticing how light his sentence seemed compared to the weight of the situation. That raised all kinds of whispers. Was he really acting alone, just caught up in the moment? Or was he connected to something deeper, maybe even part of a much larger plan that never came to light? That uneasy feeling of what if started to hang heavy over everyone involved. That same uncertainty crept through the air in Queens, like a shadow that refused to fade. The Lost Boys, their friends, and the entire community were already carrying so much grief, and now they were left tangled in a web of mystery, rumors, and lingering pain. Every time people tried to make sense of it, another question popped up, making it all feel even more complicated and haunting. The legacy of Freaky Tah became twofold. His music and the positive energy he poured into his neighborhood still inspired love and pride. But that story also carried the deep ache of lives gone too soon and questions that never found closure. And then came the day that would finally mark the end of one chapter. Kelvin Jones, the man at the center of it all, stood before the court on a Monday that must have felt like it carried the weight of years. He finally pleaded guilty for his role in the loss of Freaky Tah, the beloved rap star from Rockdale Village, a man who had become a true symbol of hope for Southeast Queens. The Queens district attorney didn't sugarcoat anything. Kelvin Jones, just 31 years old and from a modest home on 134th Street in Ozone Park, finally admitted to second-degree murder, a confession that reopened the wounds of a community still healing. The DA called it what it was, not just a crime, but a heartbreaking tragedy that shook the soul of Queens. Every word carried the weight of the people who had loved Freaky Tah and what he stood for. Freaky Tah wasn't just another artist chasing fame. He was a man who had fought his way out of tough surroundings, flipped his life around, and became more than a rapper. He became a symbol for the youth of Queens. He showed that you could rise above your environment, make something of yourself, and still give back to the same streets that raised you. And then, just like that, his story was cut short in a moment of senseless violence that left fans, friends, and family stunned. The two others who had been in that van with Kelvin, Rasheem Fletcher and Ryan Frith, both from South Ozone Park, found themselves pulled deep into the fallout. Fletcher, only 24 at the time, pled guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 7 years behind bars. Frith, slightly older, 26, admitted to criminal facilitation and was left waiting to learn his fate, facing the possibility of up to 15 years in prison. Their arrests brought a degree of closure, sure, but the whole ordeal still felt like peeling back layers of a wound that never truly healed. Every answer led to another painful question, and every resolution left behind a sense of emptiness, as if the community was still haunted by what it had lost.
As the years roll on, it became painfully clear that Freaky Tah's death wasn't just a personal tragedy for his loved ones. It was a moment that changed the rhythm of Queens forever. It was like a stone dropped into a calm pond, the impact sending ripples through generations, reshaping lives and reminding everyone how fragile greatness can be when the streets get involved. The loss of Freaky Tah sent shockwaves that tore through everything in their path. The pain wasn't just felt by those closest to him. It cut straight to the core of the Lost Boys, a crew built on loyalty, shared dreams, and a vibe that once felt unbreakable until it suddenly wasn't. His passing hit them in the deepest way possible, shaking their unity and leaving cracks in the bond that had always held them together. It wasn't just about losing a group member. It was about losing a brother, a hype man, and a vital spark that gave their music its magic. That tragedy cast a long shadow, hanging over every beat, every lyric, every moment that came after. By the time their third album dropped, the pain was impossible to ignore. The drive, the excitement, the unstoppable momentum they once carried, it all felt quieter, like the light had dimmed just a bit. What could have been another groundbreaking project instead carried the heavy energy of loss and mourning. Fans could feel it, the industry could feel it, and the group themselves was still trying to process everything. That album might have changed the game under different circumstances, but the weight of grief muted its full potential. The once electric spark of the Lost Boys had been replaced with a sense of emptiness, a reminder of what had been taken far too soon. Still, life didn't stop. It never does. Mr. Cheeks, the group's frontman and lyrical powerhouse, tried to push forward through the pain. With determination in his voice and a memory of his brother in his heart, he began carving out a new path, even if it meant walking that road alone. To his credit, Mr. Cheeks managed to find a few sparks of light in all that darkness. His solo track, Lights, Camera, and Action, gave him a powerful taste of success on his own. It was a certified hit that lit up dance floors everywhere. For a while, it felt like maybe, just maybe, the fire was starting to reignite. The song became an anthem that had clubs jumping for years, proving that Cheeks still had that magic touch. But behind the scenes, things weren't as bright. The spotlight can be a lonely place when your crew isn't beside you. And for Cheeks, it became harder to keep the momentum going without the brotherhood that had once fueled his grind. So many of the people closest to him were either locked up or gone, leaving him to carry the weight of it all on his own. After Freaky Tah's passing, it felt like the Lost Boys were running on fumes, trying to keep their legacy alive while the tracks beneath them were crumbling. Still, Cheeks, Pretty Lou, and DJ Spig Nice kept pushing for a while, performing, recording, and repping their name with pride. But that spark, that unstoppable energy they once had, it wasn't the same anymore.
especially for Cheeks. The industry didn't care about their grief or the losses they'd endured. Business was business, and the pressure to deliver never let up. Cheeks was locked into his record deal and had already taken his publishing advance, so no matter how heavy things felt, he had to keep moving. He did what needed to be done and dropped his debut solo album, John P. Kelly, in 2001, a tribute to his late cousin. The project included the smash hit Lights, Camera, and Action, which shot up the charts, reaching the top 20 on the Billboard Hot 100 and claiming the #1 spot on the rap charts. It was proof that his talent was undeniable and that his voice still had power even in the face of pain. But while Cheeks was managing to stay afloat, things weren't going so smoothly for the rest of the crew. Pretty Lou seemed to be drifting, constantly on the move between D.C., Maryland, Florida, and Georgia, as if trying to escape the shadows that followed him. His journey reflected the heartbreak and instability that lingered in the aftermath of everything the Lost Boys had been through. DJ Spig Nice tried to stay afloat, hustling gigs wherever he could, hosting events, doing appearances, anything to keep things moving. But no matter how hard he pushed, it just wasn't enough. Struggling to make ends meet, desperation started creeping in, and by 2004, he got mixed up with the wrong crowd. Things took a dark turn that no one saw coming.
That year, Spig Nice and 3 others were arrested and later convicted for being involved in a series of bank robberies across New Jersey, 10 in total. It was a shocking fall for someone who had once been on stage performing for thousands and who had no criminal record before that point. When the verdict came down, it hit hard. A 37-year federal sentence and nearly $1 million in restitution. It was heartbreaking to see how far things had spiraled from the group's golden era, when their music had united a city.
Yeah, well, Spig Nice got arrested for bank robberies. Lou ain't get arrested for it. He wasn't involved in that.
Okay, so it's just Spig Nice.
Yeah.
He got 37 years.
Yeah. He should be coming home.
37 years. And how old was he at the time? Was like about 27 or so?
Yep. 27, 28.
Meanwhile, Mr. Cheeks refused to let the flame of the Lost Boys legacy completely fade. He dropped 2 more solo albums in the early 2000s and later released his final solo project in 2015. The music still had soul, but that signature spark that once defined the Lost Boys, that chemistry, was gone. Each project felt like an echo of what used to be, a reminder of the crew that once ruled Queens. As time passed, even Pretty Lou stepped away from the spotlight. He walked away from the music world for good, choosing peace and stability over the chaos of the past. He settled down in Georgia, got married, started a family, and built a new life for himself as an accountant running his own tax business. It was a world away from the wild shows, packed clubs, and sleepless studio nights that had once defined his youth, but it was a fresh start, one he had clearly earned. And speaking of their youth, it's worth remembering where this all began. The roots of the Lost Boys grew out of shared struggle and a deep love for hip-hop. Terrence Kelly, who the world would later know as Mr. Cheeks, was the oldest of 4 kids. He grew up in a tough environment, with a mother fighting her own battles and a father who was often not around. Those early challenges shaped him. They gave him grit, drive, and the hunger to turn pain into poetry. When times got tough, Mr. Cheeks and his siblings were taken in by their aunts and grandmother, a move that changed everything. That new home was filled with love, support, and maybe most importantly, music. Just a few blocks away, Eric Ruth, better known later as Pretty Lou, was living a story that echoed the same struggles. His father's battle with addiction had pulled his mother into the same painful cycle, leaving Eric to lean on his extended family for stability. But in that household, music wasn't just background noise, it was life. His grandfather, Thurman Ruth, was a gospel pioneer, and his aunt kept soulful melodies flowing through the house every day. Surrounded by rhythm, harmony, and emotion, Eric developed a deep love for music, passion he'd later share with his close friend, Raymond Freaky Tah Rogers. By the time high school rolled around, Cheeks, Lou, and Ty had formed a tight bond, built on shared dreams and their mutual love for hip-hop. Before long, they joined forces with an ambitious young DJ named Ronald Blackwell, who would later be known as DJ Spig Nice. Together, they started calling themselves the Stay Fresh Crew, before rebranding with a name that would soon echo through hip-hop history, the Lost Boys. Their name was inspired by the 1987 supernatural comedy film The Lost Boys, a nod to their own journey, young men trying to find their way in a world that wasn't always kind. They started performing anywhere they could. Park jams, open mics, and block parties across Queens, grinding hard for years before finally getting noticed. That big break came in 1994, when their demo tape landed in the hands of an executive from Uptown Records. From there, everything changed. Their debut single, Lifestyles of the Rich and Shameless, hit like a storm. Raw, real, and filled with truth from their own lives. The song connected instantly, setting off a meteoric rise that would make the Lost Boys one of the most iconic rap groups of the 90s. But as we've seen, success came with heartbreak. After tragedy struck, the crew faced years of pain, loss, and rebuilding. They didn't dominate the early 2000s like before, but just when everyone thought their story had ended, they came back swinging in 2010. This time, the movement carried a deeper meaning. The comeback wasn't just about nostalgia, it was about legacy. Freaky Tah's son, performing under the name Freaky Tah, stepped into the spotlight to carry on his father's name. With the support of his dad's old friends, he started performing, recording, and keeping the spirit of the Lost Boys alive for a whole new generation. Through him, Freaky Tah's legacy continues to shine, proving that legends never really die, they just evolve. The music, the message, and the love all live on through those who refuse to let history fade. And there you have it. If you've been vibing with this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay locked in with the Plug Room. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about your favorite Lost Boys moment or what Freaky Tah's story means to you. And don't forget, come back tomorrow for our next deep dive into another untold story from hip-hop history. You won't want to miss it.